Hey everybody, welcome to Real United States. And I hope you saw the last episode about the Treasury building, because we're still here. And I had promised we would do a separate piece on Alexander Hamilton because of the statue that's sitting here in front of the Treasury building. Now, Hamilton was, of course, the first Secretary of the Treasury. He was appointed under President George Washington, and as such is responsible probably in large part for a lot of the way in which the financial system, at least at the time, was originally set up in the United States. Hamilton can definitely considered one of our founding fathers, a signatory to the Constitution. Now, he's on display here because of his prominence as the first Secretary of the Treasury, but he played such a huge role in American history. Unfortunately, we can't get right up to the statue. Now, on the base, there are some inscriptions on this side that you're looking at, and also on the back side. I'm going to put them here on the screen so that you can see what they say, but this area is all cordoned off, of course. There's a lot of security here in Washington, D.C., and I think perhaps recently there's been more even than in the recent past. So this is about as close as we can get to it. Hopefully we'll get a good zoom on this. Now, Hamilton is one of the few people of such prominence in American history that, not being a president, he still has the honor of having his likeness on our currency here in the United States. Only a few people have that honor. Of course, Benjamin Franklin on the 100 and Hamilton on the $10 bill now, since the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act. Prior to that, as I mentioned in our previous episode, it was the first Treasurer of the United States, Michael Hillegas, who was on the $10 note. But now, of course, since then, they changed the bills and Hamilton's picture on that. Hamilton, of course, very important figure in the Constitution of the United States. He wasn't thrilled with the Constitution, but he thought it was such a vastly more improved circumstance than the Articles of Confederation that he, of course, signed it and was very active in promoting the ratification of the Constitution. And in fact, wrote, along with James Madison, who became our president later on, and John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, wrote 85 articles which today are known as the Federalist Papers, which were works trying to convince people that it was a good move, in fact, to ratify the Constitution, which obviously we were ultimately successful in. So, now Hamilton has another rather unique place in history, in that he, although he was not the Secretary of the Treasury at the time of his death, he was a former secretary who was shot and ultimately killed by the sitting vice president. So for those of you who didn't know, Aaron Burr and Hamilton had a terrible feud that went on, the details of which I suppose for this video aren't important, but a very bitter feud, and it culminated in a challenge of a duel, which resulted in Hamilton being mortally wounded, and he died the following day. But Aaron Burr, the person he was dueling with, I don't think you're going to find anything more bizarre in American history, including the Nixon resignation, as having the sitting vice president shoot a former Secretary of the Treasury and kill him in a public duel. It was kind of the end of Burr's political career. Dueling was not legal. It was, kind of a throwback traditional practice, but at that time it was already not legal to duel. So, yeah, certainly one of the more bizarre things that have happened here in the United States in our history. Hamilton died, he was only 47 years old. So when you see this statue, you notice he's quite a dashing young fellow. Well, he didn't live to be an old man, and that's why. But certainly such a a prominent figure in the formation of our Constitution, the formation of our financial system, and just a very prolific writer. There's so much that he's written beyond the Federalist Papers. This particular work, this statue, this sculpture, is the work of James Earl Fraser, who died in 1953. Now, the reason that's significant is Fraser is you can imagine, a huge figure in many of the sculptures and reliefs and whatnot around Washington, D.C. and in other parts of the country. Not only this statue here, the statue that's on the far side that we're going to do an episode about. When you come into D.C., there's two large golden statues right on the Memorial Bridge coming over from Arlington Cemetery towards the Lincoln Monument. One of those is the work of Mr. Fraser, and of course the Erickson Memorial. If you saw that episode that we did, probably nigh on to 2 years ago now, that was also the work of Mr. Fraser. Such an important figure that Beverly and I are very seriously contemplating at this point doing a documentary film about him. You'll have to stay tuned to see if that's going to come to fruition, but that is our tentative plan at the moment. So we'll get to that in the future, but certainly beautiful, beautiful work that he did. Now, interestingly enough, the base that the statue sits on is the work of architect Henry Bacon. Now, if that name doesn't mean anything to you, it should, because this is the architect responsible for the Lincoln Monument, this rather huge mausoleum-looking piece of marble and granite that sits right on the Potomac River, the southern entrance to Washington, D.C., which I'm sure you've seen hundreds of times in video and television and movies and on the web and every place else. So the base that this statue sits on was the work of Henry Bacon. So I'd like to thank you for joining us here on The Real United States. I hope you've enjoyed this short visit to the statue of Alexander Hamilton in front of the United States Treasury Building and a little bit of history about Mr. Hamilton. If you've got questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. I really love hearing from all of you. I try to get back to everybody I can. Please stop in, say hi, whatever. I love hearing from you. I really, really do. If you're new here, hey, pick subscribe. Come along for the adventure. We got lots more to show you. And as always, thank you for watching.